Well, last week, Wits University signed a memorandum of understanding with platinum mining company Sibanye-Stillwater regarding the widening of sponsorship to the tune of 52 million rand over a 10-year period. Professor Zeblon Vilakazi is the Vice-Chancellor of Wits University. He joins us now via Zoom. A very good morning to you, Professor Vilakazi, and thank you so much for making the time.
Good morning, and thank you for having me, and to your listeners as well.
This MOU that was signed last week to enhance the Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment. Firstly, why these two disciplines, and is the support purely academic, or does it extend to other country prerogatives?
Obviously, South Africa's country prerogatives are in skills development. I think that especially in these areas that are linked to what is the backbone of our industry in South Africa and has been for the last 100 years, that is the mining industry. Particularly, Desiree, we need to now take mining to the era of the fourth industrial revolution. And part of this contribution really will be in helping the country leapfrog to what I would call mining of the future and a just transition towards sustainable development.
You're talking about 100 years of mining in South Africa, but you've also linked this to 100 years of Wits University. Of course, that only comes up next year. What's the link, and what else have you got planned in this regard?
Yes, as you know, Wits turns 100 years. I mean, Wits was actually founded as a school of mines. Mining and Wits go hand in hand. It's our founding school. So this is a start of what we call the Centenary campaign to raise funding for, among others, student funding, which you're all aware of, to cover the missing middle of the academically deserving students. Two, to actually support the academics, getting top scholars to actually help us in ensuring that we remain at the forefront of teaching, learning, and research.
So as part of this announcement that was made last week, you announced the renaming of the AMEC deck, the bridge linking the M1 to the university's Braamfontein campus east to the Wits Sibanye-Stillwater Infinity Bridge. How has this been received?
By and large, it's been well received. As you know, it's gone through all university processes, the various committees that are dedicated towards renaming. All the internal structures, the Senate, the Council, which is the governing body of the university, has given it a majority thumbs up. And we've had to, of course, talk to the original contributors to the project, Anglo-American, and they are very much aware of the process.
And just in terms of the impacts you're talking about that this should have, just unpack that for us in terms of how it will impact mining and the digitization of this space.
This is not the first of such initiatives by Sibanye-Stillwater. They established some years ago what is called the DigiMine, a digital mine, where we do what is called a mining simulator to try to simulate conditions of underground mining using very advanced algorithms, networks and so on and so forth. Now, what this means is that through the sponsorship, we will be able to enhance on those initiatives, because South Africa still to this day sits with arguably the highest reserves of unmined gold, right? But it is at levels that are beyond human sustainability, with temperatures of about 6 degrees. So we need to rethink how we do mining in a safer way, because as you go deeper into the earth, it gets much more dangerous. So therefore, part of these mining simulators are to actually mimic conditions that can foresee in advance potential tremors, potential sources of mine damage that could actually affect workers' lives. So what we actually are ensuring now is through technology, we are able to create safer, much more efficient and much more sustainable mining. That is crucial for South Africa's just transition towards the carbon neutral economy.
One would imagine that you're already engaging with these conversations, especially with your student community. What will be different about this particular sponsorship, or what added value will it bring?
One of the key underlying pillars of this sponsorship by Sibanye-Stillwater is in funding, and we made it very clear, in funding poor and academically talented students. So we've actually allocated a portion to sponsorship from year 1 to year 4 when they finish their mining engineering degree in that area. So that will have a huge impact because, as you know, there's educating one child who comes from a poor background to full graduation. That student will be employed and will support his extended family or his or her younger siblings. So the impact of education is beyond measure. So the biggest challenge we faced as a country, and for the last few years, you are aware of that, has been in actually ensuring that we have resources to give them the support, both in terms of funding, but also just the broad wraparound support, psychosocial support that will allow them to complete their studies to in reasonable time as well.
How would you respond
to? It's a multiplier effect of education.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can't speak about it now. It would be interesting to find out how those impacts, specifically if you're pointing them out to specific areas in the engineering and built industry in terms of what you would like to see in 10 years' time. I don't know if you have that at all.
Yes, what I'd like to see in 10 years' time is to see, as I mentioned earlier, us producing knowledge, producing students and graduates that will change the face of mining. The way we've done mining over the last 100 years has been fantastic for the economy, but it has come actually to an extent at a huge human cost. The mine fatalities have reduced dramatically over the last decades or so, but it's still quite high. It's one death too many. So we would like to, in 10 years' time, have a mining industry that is, number one, green, right, in terms of carbon neutral, but without compromising jobs, that we do what is called the just transition, safer, that, we don't have any of those fatalities that, we witnessed a few decades ago. But that is actually what this will do. It needs to actually change the way we do mining in this country and take mining into the level of the fourth industrial revolution without compromising people's livelihood and jobs. Of
course, this is significant in terms of investing into South Africa's academia and, by implication into the South African economy. But how would you respond to curiosity about the announcement being made in the same week that the country was marking 9 years of Marikana, of course, Sibanye-Stillwater having taken over Lonmin?
Yes, as you know, Sibanye-Stillwater took over Lonmin in the aftermath of Marikana, that very tragic incident. Sibanye-Stillwater is a company that actually was new. It actually came in at the time when Lonmin was going to fold, and had Lonmin folded, I think thousands of livelihoods would have been affected. And I'm by no means a spokesman of Sibanye-Stillwater, but from what I understand in our vetting process, I spoke to the CEO. They've actually even gone beyond just rescuing that company, but also they've actually, on special occasions, have gone on to reach out to the community of Marikana and show and empathize, and actually they've established workshops. They are actually in conversation with the community. That's what in our vetting process we established. So therefore, we are very much comfortable with the assurances we received from Sibanye-Stillwater. But although they were not directly affected, they were not partially responsible, but they were, as taking over the company, inexorably linked to the company, Lonmin. And yes, they have been reassured that they've actually reached out to the community in various forms.
So just as we wrap up this conversation, students who are watching now, prospective students who want to come and study engineering and are deciding on which institutions to go to and thinking, okay, maybe Wits is the place to go to, how do they interact with this particular funding announcement? Is it the normal application process, or is it a separate system?
Well, it's a normal application process, because what happens is this funding will go into what is called our endowment. I mean, we take funding, you put it into an endowment for it to raise capital, because if you spend money all at once, it's not sustainable, because you'll only support one cohort of students. So the aim here is to ensure that we put this into our university foundation, which will build up an endowment that will allow this to at least run into a longer time horizon. In terms of applications, students, of course, have to apply through the normal processes, and depending on their qualification, they will be, supported based on academic merit and financial need.
Well, let's thank you for talking to us this morning. I suppose time will tell in terms of looking at the benefits of this memorandum of understanding between Wits University and Sibanye-Stillwater. Professor Zeblon Vilakazi is the Vice-Chancellor of Wits University.